So let's talk a little bit about the closing process. Some listeners out there may have worked with title companies in the past, or they're getting ready to do a new real estate transaction. Walk us through what actually happens when someone closes with your firm, with the real estate attorney, the Metka Law Firm. What does the file look like from the moment you receive it to the day of closing?
So when a contract comes in, it is to say it's a team process is an understatement. There are 6 of us in my office, and everyone in my office is aware when we get a new file that comes in because we want to know that when someone's calling with a question that we have the contract and we want to be able to give them real answers. So as soon as we receive the contract, our real estate paralegals get the file opened and entered into our closing software. They make sure everything is added to our task management to make sure everything is properly organized and tracked from the beginning. Our firm administrator helps make sure that the escrow is handled properly and that everyone gets the wire instructions and the escrow receipts as soon as the deposit is received. We order the title commitment, the municipal lien search right away so that there's no delays. And especially once those reports come back, we review them very quickly to identify any potential issues and get them resolved so that we don't delay closing. The file really moves through a very intentional process that I have designed with my team over the years that Metka Law Firm has been in business. It's not just sitting in a system waiting for closing day. Between the time we receive a contract and the time it actually closes, I personally have discussed it and reviewed it with my closing team at least 3 separate times. So again, I review the title commitment, the municipal lien search, the HOA estoppel, the survey, and I mean, depending on the transaction, so many other reports. And those reviews are meant to make sure that everything is on track so that the details are being handled correctly and efficiently. Um, Once everything is, resolved from a title aspect, our administrative assistant reaches out to the parties to schedule them for closing, whether they're going to sign in our office or with a mobile notary. Make sure that everyone has their documents in advance to review and ask questions if they have questions. And then closing day comes, and ideally, it's a very quick, happy process, signing documents and, taking photos and commemorating the day.
Now, you mentioned survey reviews. What are you looking for that a title company or an average person would never notice in a survey review?
Yeah, that's a really good
A survey.
question. I was actually just training my team on this a couple weeks ago. Every a survey can reveal so much more than just boundary lines and obvious encroachments. So of
Mhm.
course I'm looking for encroachments, but I'm also comparing what I see on the survey against the rest of the file. So for example, if I see a fence on the survey, but there's no fence permit reflected on the municipal lien search, or a pool when there's no pool permit reflected on the municipal lien search, that catches my attention. That kind of inconsistency can be a red flag that something was added to the property without the proper approvals.
Mhm.
I'm also looking closely at where permanent improvements are located in relation to the property lines. If a house or a garage is built too close to a boundary line, that may point to a setback issue, either with the HOA or with the municipality. So, what I'm really doing in a survey review is not just looking at what's on the survey itself, but asking whether what's there makes legal and practical sense
Mm.
given the entire transaction itself.
Okay. And at what point do you actually authorize disbursement of funds, and why does that step matter?
That might be one of the most important steps that we do here.
Okay.
So we don't authorize disbursement until we have confirmed that every requirement for closing has been satisfied and each party has given the necessary authorization. But even beyond that, there is a final internal review process that our office and I take very seriously. I know that there is a very common misunderstanding that as soon as we are, quote unquote, closed and funded, that everything is done. But there's really quite a bit more work that's done on the administrative and legal side for us. So before any funds leave my office, my firm administrator completes a final accounting of the file for my review. And then I personally review every incoming check, every incoming wire, every outgoing check, and every outgoing wire to make sure everything is accurate and properly accounted for. And then I'm ultimately the last person that verifies the outgoing wires before they leave our account. So I actually get on the phone with our bank. And
Okay.
I think that that step matters because once the funds are dispersed, the transaction is effectively complete. And if something's missed or done incorrectly, it can be very difficult and stressful and time consuming to fix.
Let's give the listeners even more reasons to work with the Metka Law Firm. I've heard you talk about this before, and it caught my ear. You're a board certified in real estate by the Florida Bar, um, and you told me that fewer than 5% of Florida attorneys actually hold that designation. So, what does it take to actually earn that certification, and what does it mean for your clients?
Yeah. So generally speaking, I know that there are very exact requirements from that, but I had to demonstrate a minimum of 5 years of practicing almost exclusively in the area of real estate law. When I applied for board certification, I also had to have I I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but it was something like 8 references for other attorneys who have worked with me and who essentially attested to my knowledge, experience, and expertise in the real estate field. So that's just to get approved to sit for the exam itself. Once I'm approved to sit for the exam, then I sit for a full day exam where I am tested, across multiple choice and essay questions on a wide variety of real estate legal matters. So yeah, I did that back in, I think it was 2021, and became board certified in real estate.
Awesome. And so you're uniquely qualified. We can hear that, and very knowledgeable. So you've already shared that people should ask the question, like with an attorney-owned title company, how involved is the attorney? What are some other questions people should be asking when they're interviewing attorneys or closing providers that most people never think to ask?
My primary question, if I were interviewing another attorney, would be what is the percentage of your legal practice that involves this particular area of law? There are so many attorneys who practice, you know, 3, 5, unlimited numbers of area of practice, and, that maybe was an okay practice model, 20 years ago, but anymore, the law has evolved into something that is so specific, and it's constantly changing that I don't know how it's possible to give competent legal representation across that wide a variety of legal practices.
Okay. Now let's touch on commercial real estate briefly. That area of Winter Garden, West Colonial Drive is seeing a huge commercial development boom. Claremont is seeing a huge commercial development boom. How does a commercial closing complexity compare to residential? And where does attorney involvement in a commercial transaction become even more critical?
Yeah, so, on the commercial side, the primary differences that I see are the due diligence. So the inspection period for a commercial property are going to be a lot more detailed. We're gonna have a lot more reports to review, a lot more, prior documents from the seller to review as well. And then also on the commercial side, we wanna look at the zoning and the land use and the future land use to make sure that the client can use the property, um, in the way that they intend to use it. For commercial transactions, we also, if I'm representing a buyer, I always review the loan documents. Whenever you're handling a residential closing transaction, the loan documents are not negotiable. It's just, you sign if you want the home, but for a commercial transaction, that's not the case. You have to make sure that the loan documents match your commitment letter. And then there are a lot of terms that are up for negotiation that can really put the buyer in a better spot.